one-stop shop for great wrestling. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Ray Russell brings a host of great shows right to your device. There's the Wrestling Memory Grenade, Regional Wrestling, the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop, the Amazing Puro Academy Show, Retro Wrestling Review with Gene Jackson, Dave Dynasty's long-running hit, Wrestling Nostalgia, Monday Warfare, Raw vs. Nitro, the hilarious Other Ship podcast, and a whole lot more. Great shows and great guests, but where do you find all this stuff? Really simple. Try logging on to WrestleCopia.com. As I like to say, it's your one-stop shop for great wrestling memories. A short tribute to a true wrestling great. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Smith. You might remember me from all my years with Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine and other wrestling magazines, and this is a special short edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. One of the things about podcasting is sometimes news will break, and it happens in the middle of a time when you've just released an episode and you can't talk about it the following week because it would be old news. Once in a while, I'll get that wild hair, and I will put out a special episode. The last time I did something like this was when Jerry Jarrett died. Now, I just want to pay tribute to somebody who nobody, I don't want to say nobody, but not enough people talk about. The classic era of Memphis wrestling. I know Mayor John McCall knows all about this gentleman, probably knows him personally. It's one of those situations where this is one of the guys who was such a big deal during my magazine days. Now, look, I don't like to name drop about, I went and met this guy, I did this guy, hey, I ate dinner with this guy. I did a lot of that stuff. You're not going to hear a lot about that on my show because I think it's, who cares? The idea of this show is to pay tribute to the guys who were great in the ring. If you took a photo of Phil Hickerson in his prime and showed it to today's fans, they'd say either, who's that old man or who's that big fat guy? Tell you what, there was nobody tougher, more exciting in the ring, or had a bigger career than Phil Hickerson. And we're going to pay tribute to him right now on the Outdated Wrestling Hour. This is just going to be a short little career overview and thoughts about why he's so important to me. Because he was. He really was, especially at the end of his career where he did something that shouldn't have gotten over, that got over like gangbusters. But in case you don't know about Phil, he's from Tennessee, of course, and wrestled in his home state. He's from Jackson, Tennessee. And I did not know that in his later years he was a popular disc jockey. I guess WYN 106.9 in Tennessee. And I think the big thing that got him over early on was this amazing tag team he had with Dennis Condrey, obviously long before the Midnight Express. And again, tons of belts in Memphis, hard hitting. It's odd. You can't say he had charisma, but he did have charisma. For a big burly guy, he could talk really well, and he could connect, especially as a bad guy, to the fans in Memphis and that surrounding area. I thought he was remarkable. I really do. As I say, guys with his unique look and visage usually are relegated to minor roles. If they brought him to the East, he'd probably be doing jobs in WWF TV in his era. But you know what? Jerry Jarrett knew better. A lot of promoters knew better. And this guy, from the start of his long career to the end, was just a remarkable, remarkable ruler. I liked him best as a heel. But here's the thing he did that I will never forget because I was with the magazines in these days. They did this angle since Jarrett was taking over the Sportatorium in Dallas, where somehow Skandar Akbar and Toshio Yamamoto had control of world class. And who rides to the rescue than, well, Eric Embry, unlikely hero after all those years of the, photogenic Von Erich boys. But here comes Eric Embry to the rescue. Toshio Yamamoto brings in a large Oriental wrestler named P.Y. Chu-hi. It was Phil Hickerson in makeup. Know what? Nobody said, "Oh, I know him," because it was still territorial in those days. "Oh, I know that guy. He's just Phil Hickerson." Very few fans knew it. They actually bought the fact that he was Oriental, and he engaged in some wild cage matches against Embry, some sneak attacks, and finally it came down, this is in 1989, to a cage match where it was Eric Embry, then managed by then a good guy, Percy Pringle, if you can imagine that, taking on P.Y. Chu-hi with, his 2 managers outside the cage. And it was it's gonna be world class or it's gonna be the USWA. And Embry beat P.Y. Chu-hi, and it became a USWA territory. Or they called it, I guess that was the beginning of what was the USWA. Tends to blur in my mind what they did in Memphis. I always called it the USWA because that's what it was basically most of the time I was there. It was the CWA before that. But that was the last probably big moment for world class. They filled the arena, fans bought the angle, and it really, really worked, featuring Phil Hickerson. Why? Because he played his part to the hilt. Later, Phil went back to the USWA and got into a feud with Jerry Lawler again. I remember Lawler coming out on television in Memphis going, "Yeah, he's not really P.Y. Chu, he's big fat Phil Hickerson." And they started another feud just like that. Simple, direct. It made sense. No 40 minutes of talking in the ring before they take on each other in a sneak attack type of a thing that isn't even a match. It was just so much more satisfying in the days. These were great memories for me because I guess this was my second year with PWI's family of magazines. I got to admit it. Give me the USWA back then. Give me Continental. Give me Calgary. Give me Smoky Mountain. Give me all that stuff. If you can name an indie, I was in. Even Mario Savoldi's. I wasn't the biggest fan of the homogenized Hulk Hogan era, particularly as it got long-winded. The NWA was turning into WCW, and that was in a wild period of transition, but I could always, always count on Memphis. I could always count on Continental. I could count on even some things going on in Florida and other areas around the mat world. I wanted the alternative, and whether my name was on the byline or not, I wanted to write about these other territories. I loved the territories. But as I sat around the magazines long enough, they were just drying up one by one as they got eaten up by the juggernaut that was the WWF. But that's not why we're here now. We're here to pay homage to a simpler time and a good old school big guy brawling wrestler named Phil Hickerson. Giant of a man, as good as anybody who ever set foot in the ring, and I will stake my reputation. Oh, who cares about my reputation? All I know is I was wholly entertained by Phil Hickerson and Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee and the Armstrongs, and just go down the list of people who weren't on the national spotlight at that point, but people who are as good as anybody who ever set foot in the ring. I just want to say thanks. Thanks to Phil Hickerson. Thanks to the USWA. Thanks to that amazing angle at the end with Eric Embry, who remains probably the most underrated mind in wrestling history, along with, I'd say, Jerry Jaffe, who is Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. Guys who knew what they were doing. Guys who could create an angle that was believable to the point where it filled an arena that was seeing dark days. And they had the last gasp of true world-class excitement in that legendary Sportatorium in 1989. I'll never forget that. Was the match an all-time classic? No. Was the moment an all-time classic? You bet your boots it was. It's the way I liked wrestling. Simple, to the point, not blown up. They didn't need fireworks after the match. The fireworks came from the cheering fans. They didn't need explosions. The explosion was the sound of a body hitting a steel cage. It was so much better, it was simpler. I'm sorry, I'm gonna give in to my old fuddy-duddy now. I don't care. It was so much better 20, 30 years ago. It just was. Even, and this is the beauty part, as the WWF became more and more homogenized and silly, there was always an alternative. It's like being a blues music fan like I am. I don't care about Taylor Swift. I wanna listen to something earthy and soulful. So I have blues and jazz. It's an alternative. The problem now is that the indies are not keeping up with the majors in my eyes, and they're mimicking the majors, and it all looks derivative, and none of it looks like, well, the action that we're paying for, the action that we buy our tickets to see. No, I really think despite the big crowds at the big events and the popularity of indies, there's something wrong going on out there. I mean, I'm really disappointed in a lot of the indies that I've seen and clips that I'm getting where it just seems like everybody's copying everybody else. I wish I was a promoter. I wish I was a booker. I'd take a guy like Phil Hickerson, put him in my main events, and I'd have an announcer doing short interviews with the wrestlers. And then you could build a story in the ring simply by somebody fouling somebody else, like using a foreign object or something, or no, or kicking low when the referee didn't see it, that type of thing. Or how about two good scientific wrestlers going at it just because they're both good? And let's see who's better. You remember those days? Let's see who's better. How about a match between Jerry Lawler and Phil Hickerson? Who's better? That's all they needed. That's all they've ever needed. And wrestling needed guys like Phil Hickerson, who also was in that amazing tag team with Dennis Condrey that is still so fondly remembered. A lot of people look at that as the high point of Phil Hickerson's career. So I suggest you go on YouTube, take a look around. There's a lot of tributes to him right now. I'm sure John McCall is going to either write or say something about it, even though his podcast, I believe, is in its final days. But Phil Hickerson, man, it's my era. It was my jam. It was such a privilege to be with PWI and to be able to report on guys like him and cover guys like him and Billy Joe Travis and Jamie Dundee and Bill Dundee and Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony. In my mind's eye, when I was working for those magazines, those guys were of the same strata as the Hulk Hogans and the Ultimate Warriors and Kamala the Ugandan Giant and Ric Flair. I'm sorry. I have such respect for professional wrestlers. I don't look at it in the comic book way with wins and losses and things like that. Could you present a wonderful, exciting, oh boy, I remember that match from '89. Oh boy, I remember that match from '90. This is what these guys did. That's all I ever needed. I didn't need explosions. I didn't need Slim Jim ads on tables. I just wanted the action. Phil Hickerson was one of the men who provided tremendous action, and I can't say enough. So as I sit here wistful about these old days of pro wrestling, go on the interwebs and read about all the tributes you're invariably going to read about Phil Hickerson. And there's all kinds of tributes to him all over the web. And for what I'm finding out, I never met him, but I'm telling you, people say he was a really, really great guy. And I had no earthly clue that he was a disc jockey or a radio personality. You live and learn. You live and learn. I'm glad Phil Hickerson is getting his due right now as we speak. As I continue to do this podcast, I realize the type of wrestling, the style of wrestling that I enjoy the most is just getting to be a rapidly fading memory. I really, really hope that in my mind's eye that this podcast is at least keeping an inkling of that stuff in front of people and that they'll go and seek out some old tapes. Even if you're a kid, even if you're a teenager in your 20s and 30s, I beseech you, go to YouTube. Go to a lot of these great wrestling apps that are out there, I should say streaming services, and check them out. You may find out, hey, this stuff's kind of refreshing. It's simple, but it works. It always worked. Phil Hickerson always worked too. The reason for that, he wasn't a body beautiful. He was big, but he was no Hulk Hogan or Lex Luger. But there he is, main eventing a card somewhere in the United States of America. Here's to you, Phil Hickerson. Here's to professional wrestling. That's all I have to say. We will be back tomorrow, Friday. We have a show featuring Steve Gennarelli. We hope you tune in and listen to that as well. Go to Outdated Wrestling hour.buzzsprout.com. You can listen to all of our older episodes at the click of a button. I'm not going to do any ads here. This is just a real, I had to get it off my chest, that type of thing, you know? And I hope you enjoyed hearing it. Again, it's a man I never met. I never met Phil Hickerson, but now I'm sitting here missing him like crazy. I guess that's, growing old. You got good stuff to remember, but it's not around anymore. So cherish those golden wrestling memories, and hopefully you'll come back and listen to some more outdated wrestling hours as we put them together. Hope you enjoyed tomorrow's show with Steve Gennarelli, who's always great. And thank you for taking the time, 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, whatever this has been, to hear me out about a legend in Phil Hickerson. Thank you so much. We're going to play you off now. No ads or anything like that. We'll see you tomorrow.